Welcome to Peninsula Seniors Out and About. We're back at the Greystone Mansion in Beverly Hills for the 8th annual Concours d'Elegance. Let's go have a look at some of the cars. I'm here with Bill and Cindy Harris. And what did you bring to the Concours today?
We brought our 1915 Model T Ford touring car.
And is there a story as to how you acquired this car?
Yes, I've been around antique cars my whole life, and we decided we wanted a 1915 because it's eligible for the horseless carriage brass era tours, and kind of put the word out. As it turns out, my aunt is the editor of our local Orange County horseless carriage magazine. She gets all the other publications, and in San Diego the car became available, so she gave me the information, and I had to actually interview to buy this car. They didn't want it to go to just anybody.
That's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome. And Cindy, you're all in their attire, dressed to the nines.
We do. We always dress up for our events, special events like this one. We like to costume, as we call it.
And you enjoying the car also?
Oh, very much so. This is becoming a family member. We've had it about 6 years now, and we just take it everywhere. We just really, really enjoy the car.
Well, can we have a quick walk around?
Absolutely. Okay. In the state of California, they didn't start issuing actual license plates until 1914. So this car has the second year issue California porcelain license plates. These are original plates to the state of California, and the car is actually registered to those plates. So that's a real neat feature about this 102-year-old car. To tell that these license plates are original, there's an actual stamp on the back from the manufacturer that made them for the state of California. On the Model T Ford of 1915, it was the first year for electric headlights, but the side lights and tail lights still work on kerosene. In 1915, the speedometer was actually an option, didn't come standard on the Model T Ford. This car has an optional speedometer, and you can see the cable running with a gear to the right front wheel. Many people today mistake it for power steering or even front wheel drive, but it's the speedometer. The engine on a Model T Ford is 22 horsepower. It's a flathead design. There is no water pump. There is no oil pump. It's just a very, very basic construction. This vehicle actually has the original engine. We have the paperwork from when the first owner sold it to the second owner back in the 1920s, and the engine number matches. And if you look at the actual casting date, 9/14/15, this engine was cast in September 14th, 1915. And that is the original engine to this car. The Model T Fords have kind of a unique set of controls, a little different than a modern car. You have spark and gas controls here to advance retard the spark and the gas. 1915 was the last year that had the bulb horn. They then transitioned to an electric horn. You also have 3 pedals for controlling the vehicle, but there's no gas pedal. Gas is up here. So you have a pedal for low and high gear, a pedal for your brake, and another pedal to go backwards. The right pedal is the brake. The left pedal is your transmission. Push down for low gear, let off for high gear, and then to go backwards, you press the middle pedal. So you've got 3 pedals, totally different than a modern car. On the back of the car, you'll notice a stoplight and a license plate with current registration. We tour with this car. We actually drive it with the Model T Ford Club of America and the local Long Beach and Orange County chapters, as well as the Horseless Carriage Club of America, the Orange Empire chapter. We drive this car, so it's street legal. You also notice the white tires. That's the way these cars came originally, with all white tires, and we prefer that look because that's the way this car was built.
I'm here with Bob Mosier. And what did you bring to the Concours today?
We brought our 1922 Lincoln Phaeton.
And is there a story as to how you acquired this car?
Well, yeah. My wife and I bought it from a very, very famous old Lincoln collector named Jack Passy, who lived up in Northern California. And he bought the car out of Pasadena in 1954, and he kept it until the 70s and sold it to Art and Marie Graver in the 70s. And then Art passed away in 85, and the son took it over for a while, and he just sort of lost momentum, and Jack took it back. And so then in the late 90s, maybe early, yeah, but late 90s, I was up at Jackson and I said, geez, Noreen and I are looking to buy a Lincoln, and where do you know anybody who has a good Lincoln for sale? And he says, I have two of these 1922s. Would you want one? I said, absolutely, because it's a Leland Lincoln, which is before Ford bought Lincoln. And so it was built in March of 1922, and these Leland cars are pretty rare. Lots of Ford Lincolns, obviously, but it's pretty unusual. Pretty unusual car.
Could we have a closer up look of the car?
Of course. Basically, it's never really been restored. It's obviously been repainted on the outside, but the undercarriage is unrestored. I've had it all apart and looked at it very carefully, and it's very, very little wear on the undercarriage and the suspension, steering, brakes, and so forth. The engine had to be overhauled because it's been sitting many, many years, but the interior is original, and we had to replace the top some years back, and the top was original up until that point, but now the top has been replaced because we use the car. We've driven it about 15,000 miles, so we use it quite a bit. So this is a Leland Lincoln. They began production in 22, and in March of 1922 the company failed and was bought by Ford. So it's unusual to see one of these cars that was built by Henry Leland, and they were essentially unchanged up until about 1928-29 when they enlarged the engine, the displacement of the engine and everything. But this is a Model L Lincoln, just like they began building in 1922 and really didn't change for many, many years. This engine has been overhauled and cosmetically restored a little bit, but otherwise it's all original. Pretty much everything in the car is unrestored. The dashboard has never been restored, and the steering column and all the controls are all unrestored, and the interior leather is now looking a little bit dog-eared, but it is original, and one key works in every single lock on the car. It's kind of clever. Henry Leland, when had built Liberty engines, aircraft engines, clear through World War I, and when World War I ended, he began the Lincoln Motor Car Company, and he used the olive branch, or the olive leaves of the armistice in his decor, and they had it on their stationery, and they had it on the headlights and on the taillights, and it's just one of those things that World War I had a pretty profound effect on Leland. But it's a really, really nice old car, and we've used it a lot, and it's never let us down.
I'm here with Jay Leno, and what did you bring to the Concours?
I brought a 53 Cunningham. This is built by Briggs Cunningham back in the early 50s. He wanted to compete at Le Mans with an American car with an American engine. These were built in West Palm Beach, Florida. They were bodied by Vignali in Italy, who also did the Ferrari bodies. That's why people think it's a Ferrari, because it's the same body, except it has a Chrysler Hemi engine in it. So it's a great car. They built 25 of them, and every one exists.
How did you happen on this car? There's always a story. It seems like every car you have.
You just sort of, it's a car that would be of interest to someone who likes the historical side of transportation. So I got it from a guy who bought it in '68. It was an original car, and then right after he bought it, he suddenly started lusting after Porsches, and he sort of parked it in the corner of his garage, and it sat there until, 4 years ago. But it never been damaged, never been hit, so we put it back to the original colors and all that. So,
well, thank you for bringing it to the Concours.
Thanks.
Good to see you again.
Thanks.
I'm here with David Morrison, and what did you bring to the Concours today?
This is a 1919 Rolls-Royce Silver Ghost race car.
And how did you happen on this car?
I found this car in Australia, and it had an old limousine body on it, and the owner did not know the history of the car. So I got a very nice deal.
No kidding. Can we have a walk around of the car?
Sure. It's a 1919 Rolls-Royce race car, Silver Ghost. It is the last car that Rolls-Royce ever raced and ever went for a speed trial in. They took it to Brooklands track, and they went the quarter mile in 101.8 miles an hour. And the plan was to bring the car back a week later and do 100 miles in 1 hour. And at that point, the board of directors decided that they had spent too much money on the project, and they already went the 100 miles an hour. So they say, what's the point of doing the 100 miles in 1 hour? And they never did. And the original body, which was built in the tin shop of the Rolls-Royce factory, was scrapped. they refurbished the chassis and sold it as new to an Australian, the Horton family, which is like the Macy's or the Gimbals of Australia. In the 30s, the original owner had the touring body removed and a limousine body was put on the car, and then the car was parked a half mile from the ocean for 35 years and rotted away. And that's when I got the chassis from Australia. There are 5 factory photos of this car on the Rolls-Royce test track behind the factory in Derby, England. And Rolls was just learning about aerodynamics. They were starting to build aircraft engines, and so they were starting to look closer to aerodynamics. So one of the changes here, you can't see the Rolls-Royce radiator that you would typically see because of the snout to cut down the wind resistance on the radiator. The Rolls-Royce Silver Ghost has a flat front axle, so Rolls put these wooden aerodynamic wedges on the front of the axle and the front of the axle here to cut down the wind resistance when they were trying to do their 100 mile an hour. They also enclosed the wheels in these aluminum discs to cut down the wind resistance from the wire spokes. So now in the rear of the car, the aerodynamic features that they added were similar to the front, where they added this wooden wedge to the back of the rear cross member. The rear cross member is flat, and this wedge would cut down the turbulence that would be generated by the rear cross member. Also, on the differential, they added this wooden cone, again, as an aerodynamic feature that's seen on the original pictures of the car when it was on the racetrack at Brooklands in England. You'll notice that the rear of the car is open and the body is open right through to the driver's compartment. And the reason for that was they didn't want air pressure building up inside the driver's compartment. So this allowed the pressurized air to exit the back of the chassis and again improve the speed on the track. So when I bought this car, the owner didn't know what he had and I didn't know what he had either until I got the car home to America and had a chance to visit a friend of mine in England at the Rolls-Royce Enthusiast Club, where I was able to get the original build records from the factory when this car was built. And this is an original high compression engine made for the race, and it has an original high-speed rear end, and it has a special enlarged carburetor over the standard Silver Ghost at the time. All of that done to increase the speed of the car on the track. One of the nice things about a Silver Ghost is the control mechanism at the center of the steering wheel. You can adjust your carburetor, either weak or strong. If you're going up to altitude, you can weaken the mixture and decrease the amount of gasoline going to the carburetor. And if you're going for speed or power, you can increase the amount of gasoline going to the carburetor. Also has a true governor, and it's the first attempt at a cruise control, a true cruise control. It's not a hand throttle. If you set this at 45 miles an hour, the car will go 45 miles an hour up the hill and 45 miles an hour down the hill. And on the other side is your ignition timing. You can adjust the ignition, late and early ignition, depending upon your speed and depending upon what you're doing. So you can control it all here. The center button is your ignition switch, turns the battery on, or the battery and the magneto, since this car has dual ignitions, or you can just run on the magneto. So you can run on 3 different ignition systems, all from the driver's seat. These are 2 of the original factory photos of the car at the Rolls-Royce test track behind the factory. And I was able to use these photos to reconstruct the rear part of the body, which was scrapped by the factory after the speed attempt. Of note is the driver is a young man named Ernest Hives. He was the head tester at Rolls-Royce, and he took this car to 101.8 miles an hour. And I've had this car up to 80 miles an hour, and I don't want to take it at 100. But the reason it's interesting is he later became Lord Hives and ran the company. He became president of Rolls-Royce after the Second World War. So that's promoting from within the company.
I'm here with Stanley Gold, and what did you bring to the Concours today?
A 1962 Sabra convertible. It's a very rare car, made in Israel. Only about 280, 300 cars were made. This is number 95, and so it's a rather unique sports car made by the Israelis only for the North American market. They made them from 60 to 62, and then the company went broke. But it's a lot of fun, the car.
And how did you happen to buy this car?
Well, I saw a car similar to this in a car museum in Israel, and I always wanted it. I made a couple of bids on cars that needed to be restored, and then one evening my wife and I were out with some friends from New York, and I said, "You ever see a Sabra on the East Coast?" He said, "I have one I'm willing to sell right now." I bought it at the dinner table and never saw the car. My wife thought it was crazy, but I was very happy.
Oh, what a gem. Can we have a walk around?
Sure, absolutely. The interesting thing about it is it's an all fiberglass car. It's got a very small power plant. It's got a European Ford 1300 cc engine. They used to use them in Ford Councils in the UK. Car has a lot of styling, like a British Triumph or a Spitfire, even some early Daimler sports cars that were made. While it's got a small engine, because it's so light, the weight to power ratio makes it quick and a lot of fun. If I had any complaints about it, the steering radius is pretty large, so you got to be careful going around corners or getting it out of parking spots. Wire wheels with knockoff hubcaps, very common for British sports cars. Thin tires, a lot of fun to drive. Pretty sparse interior. One of the strange things is if you look at the dashboard, you see that big long wire coming out. That's the horn. I've never seen anybody not put the horn in the steering wheel, but have it actually on a big stick in the dashboard. But that's the way they built this one. So it's a bit unusual. It's got good trunk space. There's a registry of these Sabras in Belgium. Half a dozen guys, or maybe more, a couple of dozen probably, own them in Belgium. And 1 week in the summer every year, they go out camping. So you can get some camping gear in here and enjoy the forests and the trees in Europe. They've begged me to come over and participate. I haven't, but maybe someday. This that I'm holding in my hand is a build sheet. I had some Israeli friends who spent some time going into the archives of this company and find the build sheet for my car. And as a result, we know when it was delivered, what the original equipment was. It was a birthday present to me and a great addition to the car.
I'm here with Mike Heffernan. And what did you bring to the Concours today?
I brought a yellow one.
What year?
It's a 1965 Ferrari 275 GTB.
Oh. How'd you happen to buy this car?
Basically because I had $7,500 to spend on a car in 1972.
Wow.
And this one was available for $7,400, and so I figured a steal.
Oh, love the color.
Well, the color, it was silver when I first bought it, and it was lovely, and I liked that and all. But then, given the young age that I bought this car at, I subsequently had a midlife crisis, and
We all do.
well, that's right, and so mine turned into a yellow car. It made a silver car into a yellow car.
Okay. Is there some history that you'd like to talk about regarding the car?
Well, the history of the car was it was an Italian delivery car by somebody whose name we don't know and is not famous and is not a famous racing driver, etc. But then it was brought to this country in approximately 1969 and went through an owner and then one more, and then I got it. And I think it had 24,000 kilometers on it.
Oh, okay.
It was not a wildly used car, nor did it need restoring, nor did I have the money to venture into that world. So I drove it for 15 years and just drove it around. And I learned to race in this car, and I took it on the Virginia City Hill Climb.
Oh.
and we had a marvelous time with the Ferrari Club and just getting to meet people and share the car with folks. And then I had this midlife crisis, as I say, and turned it yellow. And almost unfortunately, it then turned so nice that now it was a show car. And I don't know if that was good or not. We've continued to drive it and semi-race it.
What memories? I mean, this is a part of the family.
It is a part of the family. That's right. That's right. There was a moment there where it wasn't going to be a part of the family. And but I prevailed.
There you go. There you go. Can we have a closer up look, Mike?
Please do. So the defining characteristic of this car is its short nose. And there were two models of this car, a short nose and a long nose. The short noses came first, and they made 235 of them. By the time they got to that point, they realized that the shorter nose was causing front-end lift at 120 or 30 or something. So after that, the nose was lengthened and flattened, and that brought the nose down at these higher speeds. My response to that is, gee, I'm sorry you have the altered car. This is the original, and always the original from the designer's pen seems to be the nice one. Not everyone agrees with that, but I do. So the motors on these cars are the same. They're all the same, with only minor exceptions. They're 3.3 liters and 280 horsepower. An option was to have 6 carburetors instead of the 3, and then you upped the horsepower, 10 or 20 horsepower at a higher RPM. We're not sure what that was good for. It might have been good for racing, but what we do know is that this version of the motor is a tractable motor, and it's easy to drive around town and a great pleasure. So the interior on these cars tended to be the same all through the short nose, long nose versions. The one exception that you can see that's obvious are the cloth inserts in the seats as opposed to leather. Cloth was the low-cost version, if you will, and if you wanted leather, and more through the model run, more people did want leather, you paid $50 or something. But I enjoyed the cloth because you don't slide around, so it was great for vigorous driving and this practice race thing that I was doing. So we've kept it cloth. That's new cloth, of course, different, but because the other stuff wears out. But that's the difference. There are some luggage straps back there. Nobody has, to my knowledge, ever put a suitcase in the back of one of these cars and used the luggage straps. So here's proof positive that this is a short nose, right? Ron, my friendly competitor over here, asked me if this was real or not, and you'll never know, will you? I will say, though, California does now have a black and yellow license plate option, and early on I sent in, so it is legit, and we've got it. So here's the not-so-cavernous trunk. You clearly can't go very far in this car, but maybe that wasn't the plan in the first place. So we've managed to do everything that we've wanted to do in the car with this size trunk.
I'm here with Lynn Campbell, and what did you bring to the Concours today?
We brought a 1930 Lincoln Aero Phaeton. It's a custom body, one-off car. The body is made by the LeBaron Motor Company, and it was designed and built especially for Edsel Ford. It's the only one they made, and it was made in 1929 and 30, and the Ford Motor Company toured it all over the country, and they tried to sell it. They finally sold it to a guy in Washington in 1929 or 30 at the beginning of the Depression for $10,000, and it was more money than Ford had ever sold a car for. It made the papers, and the poor man was so embarrassed that he spent that much money at the height of the beginning of the Depression that he parked it and left it sit there for the longest time. And it's been restored. It's a really fun car and a fun car to drive, and we've had a lot of fun with this car.
Can we have a closer up look?
Well, this is a 1929-30 Aero Phaeton. It was designed in the mode of an airplane because at the time Lindbergh had just flown the Atlantic. Everybody was interested in aviation and airplanes. And so many of the features of the exterior design of the car are reminiscent of airplanes of the era, like the streamlined headlights, The lights for the running lights and fender lights are much like aircraft lights. The louvers in the hood are much like the louvers on an airplane. The upholstery is much like the upholstery you found on an airplane of the day. And the piece de resistance on the dashboard is the altimeter behind the steering wheel. It has an altimeter just like you would find on an airplane. And one of the guests here today mentioned that he had one that came out of an airplane that belonged to his father in the 30s. Instead of a windshield, is just a screen that you would also find on an airplane. And of course, the most airplane-like of the whole car is the tail, which is a rudder and a stabilizer, a lot like you would find on a real airplane. The engine in this car, it's a flathead V8 engine, very large displacement, slow turning with lots of torque to move this big, heavy car. And it's a real joy to drive. It's a great car, and it's a lot of fun.
I'm here with Thomas Russell, and what did you bring to the Concours today?
We have brought a 1926 5-passenger, fully collapsible, Dietrich-bodied Lincoln Cabriolet.
Is there a story behind this?
Well, there's some owner stories behind it.
That's what we love to hear about.
One of the original owners was back in the day in the 26 was it was the Warner Brothers studio. Then it went to an auction for Cars with the Stars. Then supposedly it went to we have documentation of the Browning Museum. We have the actual pink slip. Browning Museum, that was Browning from the rifles and all that.
Oh, wow.
And then it went to there. And then it went to an auction again. And there was a gentleman named Tom Gerstner that bought it. And then from him, he didn't finish the car. He started on it. And then there was a gentleman named Tim Sharon that took it from him. And he did a little bit on it, and I bought it in probably hundreds of pieces in a garage floor that were pretty much finished. And I took it to my house. We took a bunch of pickup trucks and went and picked it up and got an auto club van thing, and he put the body of this thing on there, and we brought it to my house and put most of it together. And then we went to a place called RM, or not RM, but what was it, Tire Iron. And there was a nice gentleman there that helped us. We had it all running and everything, but he put the finishing touches on it. And here's what we have today.
Oh, it's beautiful. Awesome.
Thank you.
What a treasure.
You bet. We love this car. And there's a lot of stories about it. There's only 2 of these built in 1926. There were 12 of these built in 1925. And these are fully collapsible, which is a feat in itself, because the whole thing looks like a collapsible limousine with the limousine driver in front, and the whole top is off, and you got the passengers in the back.
Can we have a closer up look?
Absolutely. This is actually a 1926 Lincoln, but it has the upgrade of a 1927, which means it has the bullet headlights on the front instead of the barrel headlights, and it has front brakes, which the ones in 1926 did not have. So this has the front brakes, and it has the bullet headlights on it. Then everything else is the same. It has the same motor, the V8 motor and everything. This is the original engine. It's got the updraft carburetor. Everything else here is totally stock. It's got the tank on here for the carburetor, for the gasoline. But all that's totally original the way it came. There are some other features I'm going to show you on this car later on that are not original, that are made by a gentleman named Ray Dietrich. And this body is by Ray Dietrich. And you can see the emblem. It's kind of hidden behind there. I don't know if you can see it, but this is a Dietrich body. These are the tools that came with this car back in the day that remove the top off this car. This car is what they call a totally fully collapsible, which means it's a total convertible. Okay, by using these tools, some of them, here's one example, it fits in here. You roll the window down, this piece claps in and fits into here. This top comes off. This folds in, and this whole top here folds back to the back. So this thing from the front to the back is totally open. This also has what they call a fat man steering wheel on it. So in the day, some of the limo drivers were a little bit overweight at the time. So what they could do when they come in here, they push this little button, I can see, and this would go down like so, and he could get in, and then you pull the steering wheel back up, so it's underneath his legs. So that's another feature that this car had at the time. And here's where the 5 passengers are. There's 3 here and 2 jump seats. As you can see, there's a microphone on the seat right there. That's used to talk to the limo driver in the front, and he can hear through that little horn right there.
It's good to see you again, Bruce.
Yeah, it's always nice to see you show after show, and you always do such a wonderful production.
Oh, well, thank you.
You're a
thank you.
natural.
Oh, well, thank you. Well,
Yeah.
it takes guys like you coming on camera and telling about the cars.
Well,
that's what makes it.
We love talking about our cars, I can tell you that.
So what'd you bring to the Concours this year?
Sure.
Bruce Meyer?
Yeah, Bruce Meyer, Beverly Hills, California. This is in my hood. So we brought a 1957 Ferrari Testarossa. And this car was bought new by a local gentleman named John von Neumann, and he was the distributor and kind of main dealer for Porsche and Ferrari. So this was his favorite car. This car, by Ferrari's records, has won more races than any other Ferrari. Wow. So it's in 1957, it was brought in from Europe, and it has raced, raced right through to 1961. So it's got a wonderful race record, but more importantly, I think this is just one of the prettiest cars. It's the prettiest car I've ever owned, and we drive it. We showed it at Pebble Beach a couple years ago, and we drove it home.
Oh, wow.
So the car's got plenty of thousands of miles on it with me behind the wheel, and I look forward to driving it home today. It's fun getting behind the wheel.
Well, can we have a close-up look?
I wish you would. So this is a very early Testarossa Ferrari, 1957, and what makes it special, at least to me, is that it has an envelope body. They also made pontoon fender Testarossas and envelope body Testarossas. This is an envelope body Testarossa. I particularly like the color, which is the original color, silver, with a red interior. And one of the fun things in this car, of course, is the exhaust note. And out back it has 4 of big megaphones that just broadcast your whereabouts at all time behind the wheel. Very comfortable car. My wife and I showed it at Pebble Beach. Couple of years passed, and then we drove it home. So we have many miles in this car, enjoyable miles, and it's fun bringing it out to a show like this where people can enjoy it. So this is really what put Ferrari on the map. This is a 250 Ferrari V12 engine, 6 carburetors. The gorgeous valve covers are red, which relates to the name Testarossa, which means redhead. And it has about 285 to 300 horsepower. We've never dynoed it, but it runs right along and makes a great, great sound. So it's a beautiful Ferrari interior, and it has a gated shift. In other words, the gears are all notched in these gates right here. So it's in first gear, second gear, third gear, and then over here is a reverse lockout. So you don't want to hit reverse when you're driving. That would not be a good noise or a good ending.
Okay, what's it like to drive?
Well, it's thrilling to drive. I mean, the sound is a good part of it. You have to think the car is 60 years old, and it doesn't drive like a new Porsche or Mercedes, but it's very harsh, but it is what it is. It's just a thrill. The noise and the performance is very fast, and it's such a beautiful thing, and everybody enjoys it, and it's a privilege to have it here. Good.
Thank you,
Sure.
and good to see you again,
good to
Bruce.
see you as well.
I'm here with Andrew Lavi, and what'd you bring to the Concours today?
I brought a 1954 500 Mondial Berlinetta, one of 2 made, and raced in the Mille Miglia 3 times and the Tour de France as well.
How'd you get involved with this car?
I bought it from a collector on the East Coast. We negotiated for a while to buy 2 of his cars, and it fit into our collection because we love the Berlinettas of the early 50s, especially the Mille Miglia cars and the TDFs.
Can we have a closer-up look?
Of course you can. So this 54 Mondial has some nice features which include the front end rivets as well as the rear end rivets. They're unique to the car. It's a great feature, really streamlines the front. And this car has a 4-cylinder engine which was better in the time for the long distance touring races such as the TDF and the Mille Miglia. It was a more reliable engine, and due to the fact that there was no noise dampening at the time, it was a lot more manageable than a big V12 engine. Well, as I mentioned before, it's a 4-cylinder engine, Weber carburetors. This car was restored back at the factory by Ferrari themselves, so as you can see it's in very good condition. It's a very nice driving car, easy to shift through the gears, especially doing hill climbs. Overall, it's a nice touring car that had some great racing provenance at the time, and it's really an attribute to the longevity of Ferrari engines that today the original engine is still very usable and can do any type of driving nowadays. As you can see, the interior was really stripped down for racing purposes. It's got a unique feature of the interior roll bar exposed and the roll cage. No accessory features to make it comfortable for driving, purely racing. No wind-down windows, no radio obviously at the time. The seats do not move, so it was made for the driver at the time.
I'm here with Mike Vietro, and what did you bring to the Concours today?
Well, today I brought a very special car. It's a GM styling car, one of about 2 or 3 that they made specifically for the General Motors executives, the higher-ups. This particular one was built for Bunky Knudsen. He had recently come over from the Pontiac division to head up General Motors' Chevrolet division. And unbeknownst to him, we're not really sure, on the first or second day of production of the new Corvette Sting Ray in 1962, when it came off the assembly line, they pulled this car and sent it up to Warren, Michigan, to the design studio to transform it from a basic 1963 fuel-injected Corvette into what you see behind us.
Oh, wow. Now, how'd you happen to get this car?
Well, I'm a master of the deal. And this car actually came to me from a collector in the Midwest who had a desire to buy a very rare 63 Z06 with the 36.5-gallon gas tank. We refer to them as Z06 tankers. This was a very special car which they raced in the late 62 season against Carroll Shelby. So it had a lot of historical significance. So he traded Bunky plus another car to get into that particular racer.
Can we have a closer-up look?
Absolutely, let's do that. New for 1963, which debuted in late 1962, is the Sting Ray Corvette, with the first time debuting the electrical headlight motors, as you can see in the front. Also very interesting for 1963 are the hood grills. They were added from 1963 and never used again. The hood stripe on this car was added at the styling studio, and that was part of the enhancement that this car had done to it in honor of Bunky Knudsen, the Chevrolet general manager who reigned over the Chevrolet motor division. This car was built specifically for Bunky Knudsen. It's one of 3 of these styling cars that were built. This particular one, we feel, is the only one that left the factory as a fuel-injected version. As you can see, the fuel injector and the additional chrome under the hood was totally modified at the factory. The use of chrome was not something that Chevrolet did, and of course the black crinkle finish was the trademark of the Bunky Knudsen car. Also very interesting with this particular Corvette is the side exhausts that were hand-formed headers that came out and exited through the actual fender. These are functional side pipes, never before seen on a Corvette, and you can imagine what this car looked like in 1962, 1963, cruising down the boulevards of Detroit, Michigan. One of the other styling cues used for the early styling cars is these 2-bar spinner knockoffs. Functional knockoffs with the 2-bar spinner, never used on a production car. Very unique and very rare. So I'm going to go over briefly the interior of the 1963 Bunky Knudsen styling car. As you can see, the time and effort they put into the door panels on this car. Wait a minute, I got the factory alarm on. Okay, she's resting now. We're good. So anyways, here we are. Let's point out a few things that were customized at the design studio, one of which is this fabulous door panel, which was a treatment of stainless steel, white leather, and burgundy. You can see the cross flags down below the wing vent, crank handle, and this car features power windows, which I'll show you in a moment. And what she's actually doing is sitting on one of those one-off type custom GM styling floor grates, which are made out of stainless steel, and they're signature of some of the styling cars that actually left the GM design studio. Another interesting interior cockpit item is that two-spoke wooden steering wheel. Very rare. I don't know that I've ever seen another one, so that's a very nice touch and very nice feature for this interior. You can see also that the dash cluster as well as the glove box door, the exterior surround is done in the matching interior color. Most of these were done in a flat black, or all of them, I guess I could say, except for the styling cars. It's a 4-speed manual transmission, and this is also set off nicely with the white and burgundy custom leather interior. In 1963, leather was only offered in one color, which was saddle tan. So this car was featured at the design studio, and this color combination, which is a fire mist gold metallic, which is a Cadillac color actually, with the white stripe and the two-tone white and burgundy leather interior, just absolutely sets the car off. And you can only imagine somebody like Bunky Knudsen driving to work every day in this car with the top down on nice days in Detroit, Michigan, and you can imagine what the neighbors thought of him cruising around.
I'm here with Leslie Kindle from the Peterson Museum. What did you bring today?
We brought a 1923 Mercedes-Benz 2895 Targa Florio. Actually, a 23 Mercedes, not Mercedes-Benz. It was before the merger.
Oh, wow, wow. Can you tell us a little bit about the background of this car?
Well, the background of this car, it's called a Targa Florio because of how well that Mercedes did in the Targa Florio racing course in Italy before World War I. It's very, very large engine. It's about a 7.2 liter, 6-cylinder engine, but it's got a single overhead camshaft, 4 valves per cylinder, all stuff that's really common today. But back in the day, back before World War II, even before World War I, that was like the ultimate in sophistication.
Oh, wow. Can we have a closer-up look?
You bet we can. Okay. Well, this is the Peterson Museum's 1923 Mercedes Targa Florio, and the fun begins at the front. First of all, it's a very severe car. It's a very, very intimidating car to have come up behind you on the road. You are met with this V-shaped grille, the 3-pointed star at the top, 2 more 3-pointed stars, and at the starting crank hole you have yet another 3-pointed star. So if the message that this wasn't a Mercedes didn't get across to you, then that's your fault. The car, as you can see, it's got, as I mentioned, it's got very severe lines. It's almost cubist in its execution. But this is what the Teutonic style was in Germany. It was very, very, very bold, very forward, kind of an almost an intimidating style. Well, what we have here is the fun part of the car. This is the clockwork, the engine of our Mercedes 2895, and it gets its name 2895 because it has 28 what they call taxable horsepower. It's kind of an archaic tax rating that Germany used at the time, and it had 95 actual horsepower, which doesn't seem like a lot today, but back in 1923, you have to keep in mind a Model T had about 20 horsepower. So you're looking at almost the horsepower rating of 5 Model T Fords. But what you were getting for your money was a straight 6, single overhead cam, 4 valves per cylinder with twin carburation, a monster of an engine. In fact, the same engine that was used in certain World War I era bombers and fighter planes. Well, this is what a lot of people call the office. This is where the driver sits. And a lot of the 2895s were bodied in fairly formal coachwork. Some had town car bodies, some had limousine bodies, and some had very, very spacious touring car bodies. But this is fairly unusual. It's on the short wheelbase, and it has room for just 2 people up front, and then 1 additional person in what they call a dicky seat, or what we would probably call the rumble seat. It's got a full complement of gauges, which again for 1923 was pretty hot stuff. Not every car had all this equipment on it, all these dials and gauges, but you needed all of this stuff to drive the car back then because you really had to pay attention with every little detail. The oil pressure you had to watch yourself. You know, of course, you have to watch the amperage. You have to watch the fuel level naturally, and just how all the mechanical systems were functioning. It was very, very important in those days before computer-controlled mechanical systems. Well, in America, we call them rumble seats, but in Europe, a lot of people call them dicky seats. And this is room for one, and it's actually a very comfortable place to sit, and it's kind of a fun place to sit because you sit really high. You look actually over the windshield. And if you lean forward, you can talk to the driver and the passenger and just have a good time going down the road. Well, right now we're looking at the rear of the Peterson Museum's 2895 Mercedes Targa Florio. This is actually the view that I think most people saw of this car, because you didn't get passed in this car unless you wanted to be passed. It was a locomotive out on the road, big 7.2 liter engine, pass anything. And you look at it's as businesslike in the back as it was in the front. Very, very rugged looking. You can tell that how stout the frame was, how robust this car was. You even look at the fuel filler cap is just so much more than it needs to be, something really meaty piece of metal. And you look about a foot away from that to the left is where the gas gauge is. Yep, the gas gauge is not on the dashboard. It actually sits on the gas tank itself. And being a sporting roadster, the windshield does fold down. All you have to do is loosen a couple of components, and you can fold it flat, tighten them up again, and you can drive off into the sunset. The Mercedes drives like I think most people would expect it to drive. It's a handful. She's a very heavy car, but a locomotive. Very, very powerful. Once you're in top gear, you hardly have to shift at all. It'll pull up any hill. And it has pretty good brakes, too, when you consider that they are power-assisted brakes. Back in 1923, that was a big deal. And, of course, Mercedes would have that.
Thank you for watching Peninsula Seniors Out and About. I'm Betty Wheaton. See you next time.